So we've got a pretty interesting story to report on here that is pretty important for the trans community or the LGBTQ community as a whole. NBA legend Dwyane Wade, three-time NBA champion Dwyane Wade, actually has already been sort of hinting at his son having some sort of affiliation with LGBT community. I think he had originally said that he supported him going to Pride, and so we didn't really have any more details on that scenario, but he was on the All the Smoke podcast, a really good podcast, by the way. I watched a lot of their stuff. It's with Matt Barnes and Stack, of course. And so it's a really, really dope podcast. I recommend you check that out if you're an NBA fan. But he was on there and he actually talked about it. He said, "I've watched my son from day one become into who she now eventually has come into. Nothing changes with my love. Nothing changes with my responsibility." The former Miami Heat player has previously spoken out in support of his 12-year-old, but Thursday's interview was perhaps the first time he publicly referred to Zion using both male and female pronouns. It says, Wade did not specify his child's gender identity or sexual orientation, saying that would be his child's message to share with the world, though he did speak of Zion as being part of the LGBTQ community. I had to look at myself in the mirror and say, what if your son comes home and tells you he's gay? What are you going to do? We want them to be whoever they feel they can be in this world. That's our goal. It says during the All the Smoke interview, Wade also talked about his experience facing cyberbullying over his embrace of his child. While you're trying to go down that process, this is what you're going to come at. This is what's going to come at you. It's going to be a lot of negativity. It's going to be a lot of hate, and it's not even for my son's sexuality. It's about being a young black man. One thing I got to do now is get smarter and educate myself more, Wade said. And so, this is really interesting because basically there is this sort of divide here. Now, there's been a lot of outpour of support for Dwyane Wade and his family, which is good. I'm glad to see that on Twitter. But there are areas on the internet where you will find, sometimes Instagram comments, or I've seen a YouTube video with a bunch of comments, where it seems like the African American community is not very open to trans issues, being gay, and we all know that unfortunately in parts and aspects of the African American community, they're just simply not accepting of those kinds of things, as Lil Nas X had said. And so it's unfortunate, but I think Dwyane Wade having this coming out and talking about this and embracing it and everything, I think this is a beneficial thing for, assuming that, Zion is trans, essentially, which we don't really know because he says that he's going to wait for her to come out and, give her message. So we don't really know what the scenario is right now. All I guess we know is that it's possibly trans / part of LGBTQ. But this is very big for the trans community, I would say, man. It's pretty big if Dwayne comes out. And Dwayne's obviously a really cool dude and everything. A really good dude. This is definitely going to be big. There's, like I said, man, there's still going to be some people who, I'll see comments of people saying, like, oh, you're encouraging them to be gay or something like that. It's so weird, man. Some of these comments from people just doesn't make any sense. You kind of, like, the thing is, like, what your, sexuality is and your orientation and everything. Like, from a pretty early age what that is, right? I mean, everyone's got their first crush when they're, like, 4 or whatever. You kind of know, right? You kind of know what your identity is. And so, definitely makes sense that someone's kind of born with a brain that's wired differently than, their, the parts that they're given with their body. So, the brain and the body is so intricate, there's always going to be things like that. So I think it's not implausible. In fact, I think it's plausible for that to happen. But this is very interesting, and I'll try to continue to cover this as it unfolds.